Your physical therapist will never tell you this in a 15-minute appointment, because insurance doesn't pay for 15 minutes of walking lessons. But it's the one thing that determines whether you spend your 70s and 80s walking to your own mailbox or watching someone else do it for you. It has nothing to do with strength training, nothing to do with supplements, nothing to do with the cane or the walker sitting in your hallway closet. It's about 4 inches of ground contact, repeated every single time your foot touches the floor, thousands of times a day, and almost nobody over the age of 70 is doing it correctly anymore. I've spent over 2 decades in clinics watching this exact thing happen to good, capable, independent people. They come in after a fall, holding an ice pack to their hip, completely bewildered. "I wasn't even doing anything," they tell me. "I was just walking to the bathroom." And every time I watch them walk back out of my office, and every time I see it. The short steps, the feet that barely clear the floor, the slight forward lean, like they're walking into a wind that isn't there. Nobody taught them to walk this way. It crept in, one cautious step at a time, until it became the only way they knew how to move. And by the time it shows up as a fall, the pattern has usually been building for years. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what that pattern looks like, why your brain talked you into it without asking permission, and the one correction that undoes most of the damage, starting with the very next step you take after watching this. Then I'm going to give you 8 exercises, not 5, not 3, a full progression you can actually use, plus a real story from my clinic that shows you what this looks like when it goes right. And I'll answer the questions I get asked most often about this exact topic. Stay until the end, because the order you do these exercises in matters almost as much as the exercises themselves. Let's start with what's actually going wrong. Here's something most people don't realize. Your walking pattern is not fixed. It's not something you learned once in childhood and then carried unchanged into your 70s. Your gait, the technical word for the way you walk, is constantly being rewritten by your nervous system based on the most recent feedback it received. And somewhere around a stumble, a near miss on an icy step, a moment of dizziness getting out of bed, or just months of quiet uncertainty about your balance, your nervous system makes a decision on your behalf. It decides that lifting your feet is risky. It decides that long, confident strides are risky. So it rewrites your walk into something smaller, lower, and more cautious. The irony is brutal. The walking pattern your brain chooses to protect you from falling is the exact pattern that makes falling more likely. Here's what that pattern typically looks like, in case you want to check it against your own walk, or against a parent's or a spouse's. The stride shortens, often dramatically, sometimes to less than half its original length. The feet stop lifting cleanly off the ground and instead slide or shuffle forward, staying low the entire time. The upper body tips slightly forward, almost like the person is leaning into each step rather than standing tall through it. The arms, which should swing naturally to counterbalance the legs, go quiet and still. And the eyes drop down toward the floor instead of looking ahead, because some part of the brain has decided that watching the ground is more urgent than watching where you're going. Each one of these changes feels, in the moment, like it's making walking safer. Shorter steps feel more controlled. A lower foot feels less likely to wobble on landing. Leaning forward feels like it keeps you from tipping backward. But stack all 4 of these together, and you've built one of the least stable ways a human body can move. Think about it mechanically for a second. If your foot is staying low to the ground throughout the swing phase of your step, you've eliminated your margin for error. A foot that lifts 2 inches off the floor has 2 inches of clearance to work with if it encounters a rug edge, a doorway threshold, an uneven patch of sidewalk, a grandchild's toy. A foot that's shuffling half an inch above the floor has nothing. The moment it catches on something, there's no buffer, no recovery window. And because your weight is already pitched forward from that leaning posture, your body has nothing to fall back on, literally. The center of gravity is already past the point where a backward correction is possible. You go down, forward, fast, often without even getting a hand out in front of you. This is why falls in this pattern so often happen on completely flat, familiar ground, not on icy steps, not on unfamiliar terrain. In the kitchen, in the hallway, walking from the couch to the bathroom at 2 in the morning. The surface wasn't the problem. The walk was. I want to be very clear about something because I think it gets lost in a lot of health content aimed at older adults. This is not a character flaw, and it's not something you did wrong. It's an entirely predictable mechanical and neurological process, and understanding why it happens is half the battle in fixing it. 3 things are usually happening at once. First, the muscles responsible for a confident step, your hip flexors, which lift your thigh and swing your leg forward. Your glutes, which stabilize your pelvis and drive you forward through push-off. And your deep core muscles, which keep your trunk upright and steady while one foot is briefly off the ground. All of these weaken with disuse far faster than most people expect. Muscle strength doesn't just decline with age on its own schedule. It declines based on how much you ask those muscles to do. And if you've spent the last few years gradually taking smaller steps, your hip flexors have been doing less and less work with every passing month, which means they've gotten weaker, which means taking a confident step has gotten genuinely harder, not just scarier. It's a downward spiral that feels like a confidence problem, but is actually, underneath, a strength problem. Second, the communication speed between your brain and your legs slows down. This isn't a metaphor. It's measurable nerve conduction velocity, and it does decline somewhat with age, but far more significantly when it's not regularly challenged with varied, confident movement. The reflexes that catch you when you start to stumble, the quick adjustments in your ankle, knee, and hip that happen below the level of conscious thought, get slower and less precise. Shuffling doesn't train these reflexes. It avoids needing them in the first place, which means they atrophy right alongside the muscles. Third, and this one is psychological, but no less real for it, there's an erosion of trust between you and your own balance system. After a stumble, a fall, or even just a few unsteady moments, it's completely natural to become more cautious. But that caution, left unchecked, doesn't just make you walk carefully. It makes you walk in a way that's biomechanically worse. Because the instinctive response to feeling unsteady is to shrink your movements, not to walk taller and stronger. Nobody tells you that the instinct is backward. So you follow it for years, and it slowly carves itself into your default walk. The good news, and I mean this sincerely, is that every single one of these 3 factors is reversible at almost any age. Muscles respond to being asked to work again. Neural pathways respond to being practiced again. And confidence responds to evidence. Specifically, the evidence your own body gives you when you start moving more capably, and nothing bad happens. If I could only give you one instruction today, it would be this. Land on your heel first, every single step, starting now. Here's why this one detail carries so much weight. A natural, healthy human gait is built around a sequence called heel-to-toe rolling. Your heel makes contact with the ground first. Your weight then rolls forward through the arch, across the ball of the foot, and finally pushes off through the toes to launch the next step. This sequence isn't arbitrary. It's the most mechanically efficient way the human foot and ankle are built to absorb impact and generate forward momentum. When children learn to walk, once they move past the wide-legged toddler stage, this is the pattern they naturally fall into. It's the default setting. Shuffle gait abandons this sequence entirely. Instead of a heel strike, the foot lands flat, or sometimes toe first, low to the ground, without the rolling motion. And once that heel strike disappears, several things go wrong simultaneously. Step length shrinks because a heel strike is what allows your leg to reach forward. Without it, your brain unconsciously shortens the stride to compensate. Ground clearance disappears because the foot doesn't need to lift if it's not reaching forward and rolling through, it just slides. And the muscles that produce a heel strike, the hip flexors that swing the leg forward, the muscle in your shin that lifts your toes during the swing, stop being used, and so they weaken further. It becomes self-reinforcing. The less you heel strike, the weaker the muscles that produce a heel strike become, which makes heel striking harder, which makes you do it even less. That's the spiral I mentioned. And it's also exactly why one conscious correction can interrupt the entire chain. When you deliberately reach your heel forward and land on it first, you're not just changing how your foot touches the ground. You're triggering a chain reaction through your entire body, in this order. Your step naturally lengthens, because reaching the heel forward physically requires a longer stride. Your foot is forced to lift higher during the swing phase to clear the ground for that longer reach, which immediately restores the safety margin that shuffling eliminated. Your posture straightens, because leaning forward and reaching your heel out in front of you at the same time is mechanically awkward. Try it, and you'll feel your spine want to stack back up over your hips. And your hip flexors, glutes, and core all reactivate, because none of the rest of this is possible without them doing their job again. One change, 5 consequences, all of them protective, all of them happening automatically the moment you commit to the heel strike. This is the part where most advice falls apart. People are told to land on their heel, and they go try it once on a walk to the mailbox, find it feels strange, and give up. The reason it feels strange isn't that the advice is wrong. It's that you're trying to apply a new motor pattern at full speed, in real-world conditions, without ever having practiced it slowly first. That's like trying to learn a new golf swing for the first time during a tournament. You need a practice space, and you need to start absurdly slow. Here are 8 exercises, in the order I'd actually have a patient do them, building from the most basic awareness work up to real-world application. The first one is the wall-supported heel tap. This is where everyone should start, including you, even if you think your balance is fine. Stand next to a wall or a sturdy countertop, with one hand resting on it lightly, not gripping, just there for confidence. Shift your weight onto one leg. With the other foot, reach forward and simply tap your heel on the ground, several inches further than your normal step would land. Then bring it back. Don't even take a full step yet, just the reach and the tap. Do 10 taps with one foot, then switch. The goal here is purely to feel what a deliberate heel reach feels like in your hip and your leg, with zero risk because your weight never actually transfers onto that foot. Most people are surprised by how disconnected this movement initially feels, like asking a muscle to do something it's forgotten how to do. That feeling fades within a session or two. The second is the conscious heel strike walk. Now we add weight transfer. Find a hallway, ideally one with a wall within arm's reach the whole way. Stand at one end. Begin walking, but slower than feels natural, about half your normal pace. With every step, consciously reach the heel forward. Land on it deliberately. Feel your weight roll forward through the foot and push off through the toes. Walk 10 steps forward this way. Turn carefully, using small, controlled steps rather than a quick pivot. Walk 10 steps back. That's 1 round. Do 3 rounds, resting half a minute between each. The instruction I give every patient here is the same. Speed is the enemy right now. The slower you go, the more control you have, and the more clearly you're teaching your nervous system the correct pattern instead of letting old habits take over on autopilot. The third is the high knee march. Stand behind a sturdy chair, both hands resting on the back of it. Lift your right knee toward your chest as high as comfortably possible. Then lower it with control rather than dropping it. Then the left knee. That's 1 rep. Do 15 reps per side. Keep your torso upright the entire time. Don't lean backward to help the leg up, since that defeats the purpose, which is making the hip flexor do the work on its own. This exercise exists because the heel strike depends entirely on your hip flexor's ability to lift and swing the leg forward with authority. If that muscle is weak, the heel strike will always feel forced and unstable, no matter how much you think about it. Strengthen the lift, and the heel strike stops requiring conscious effort. The fourth is the controlled stride length walk. Place 2 strips of tape on the hallway floor, about 16 to 18 inches apart. Stand at one end and aim to land your heel right at or just past the second strip with each step, alternating feet, walking the full length of the hallway. 10 strides down, turn, 10 strides back, twice through. If 18 inches feels too ambitious at first, start at 12 and work up. This is about training your stride length back toward a healthier range without lunging or overreaching. Just a steady, confident, slightly longer step than the shuffle you may have settled into. The fifth is the slow motion walk. This is the strangest feeling exercise on this list, and also one of the most valuable. Walk the length of your hallway as slowly as you possibly can. Each individual step should take 3 to 4 full seconds. Lift the foot, pause briefly in the air, reach the heel forward, lower it down. Feel the weight shift across the foot. Push off through the toes. Begin the next step. The reason this works is that it strips away every shortcut your nervous system normally relies on at walking speed, momentum, habit, autopilot, and forces each muscle group to fire independently and consciously. 2 passes down the hallway is plenty for one session. Expect it to feel oddly difficult. That difficulty is the exercise working. The sixth is the obstacle clearance step. Place a rolled towel or a foam roller on the floor, about 4 to 6 inches high, in your hallway, with a wall or chair nearby for support. Walk toward it at a normal, controlled pace. As you approach, deliberately lift your foot early and clear the obstacle with visible room to spare. Then bring the trailing foot over as well. Walk a few steps past it, turn, and step back over it going the other direction. 5 passes each way. Real homes are full of small trip hazards, door thresholds, pet bowls, extension cords, the edge of a bath mat, and this drill trains the specific skill of spotting an obstacle ahead and clearing it with a deliberate, confident lift rather than a panicked, last-second shuffle stop. The seventh is the heel-to-toe weight rock. Stand with feet hip-width apart near a counter or sturdy chair. Slowly rock your weight forward onto the balls of your feet. Hold for 2 seconds. Then rock backward onto your heels. Hold for 2 seconds. Repeat 10 times. This isn't a walking drill exactly. It's a foundation drill. It rebuilds your awareness of where your weight is sitting on your foot at any given moment, which is the exact sensory skill that lets you feel a proper heel strike happening in real time rather than just guessing at it. The eighth is the carry and walk challenge. Once the first 7 feel comfortable, this is the bridge back to real life. Pick up something light and slightly awkward, a small laundry basket, a grocery bag, a cup of coffee, and walk your hallway using everything you've practiced. Heel strike first, full foot lift, natural stride length, upright posture. Most falls don't happen while someone is thinking carefully about their gait. They happen while someone is carrying something, talking to a grandchild, or glancing at their phone. Training the pattern while distracted, in a safe and controlled way, is what makes it actually stick when it matters. I want to tell you about a woman I worked with. I'll call her Margaret, since that's not her real name, but the details are real. Margaret was 78, sharp as anything, lived alone, and had fallen twice in 4 months, both times in her own kitchen. Both times on completely flat tile with nothing on the floor to trip on. She was furious with herself. She kept saying the same thing every patient says. I wasn't doing anything different. When I watched her walk down the hallway of the clinic, the pattern was textbook. Steps maybe 8 inches long, feet barely clearing the floor, shoulders rounded forward, eyes fixed on the tile in front of her toes. She had, without ever deciding to, taught herself an entirely new way of walking over the previous 2 or 3 years. One shuffle at a time, every time she felt a flicker of uncertainty. We didn't start with anything dramatic. The first week was almost entirely the wall-supported heel tap and the slow-motion walk, because her hip flexors were genuinely weak and her confidence was lower than her strength even was. The second week, we added the high knee march and the conscious heel strike walk. By the 4th week, she was doing the stride length walk with the tape on her kitchen floor at home. She'd put it down herself, which told me everything about where her motivation was. By the 8th week, the obstacle step and the carry and walk challenge. What changed wasn't just her walk, although that changed dramatically. She added nearly 5 inches to her stride length, and her gait assessment scores improved enough that we documented it. What changed was that she stopped watching her feet. She told me, almost as an aside, that she'd walked to her mailbox and back without once looking down, and that she hadn't realized until that moment how long it had been since she'd done that. That's the real marker of success here. Not the measurements, although those matter. It's when looking at the ground stops being necessary because the ground stops feeling unpredictable. She hasn't had a fall since. That was over a year ago now. Let me answer a few of the questions I get asked most often about this. How long before you notice a difference? Most people notice the mechanical difference, the feeling of a longer, more controlled step within the first 1 or 2 sessions, simply because conscious attention changes movement instantly. The deeper change, the one where the new pattern becomes automatic and you stop having to think about it, generally takes 4 to 8 weeks of consistent daily practice, sometimes longer if the shuffle pattern has been in place for several years. Consistency matters more than intensity here. 10 minutes daily beats an hour once a week, every time. Is it normal for this to feel exhausting at first? Yes, and that's actually a good sign, not a warning sign. You're asking dormant muscles to fire again, and asking your brain to run a motor program it hasn't used in a long time. Mild muscle fatigue in the hips and shins after these exercises is expected. Sharp pain, joint pain, or dizziness is not. And that's the line where you stop and check with your physician or physical therapist rather than push through. What if you've had a hip replacement, a knee replacement, or a heel condition like plantar fasciitis? Please talk to your doctor or physical therapist before starting this routine, and mention these exercises specifically by name. Most of them can be modified. For instance, the obstacle step might need a lower obstacle, or the high knee march might need a smaller range of motion early on. But a professional who knows your specific joint history should be the one making that call, not a video. Do you need to do all 8 exercises every single day? No. A realistic weekly structure is to rotate through them rather than doing all 8 daily. Something like the heel tap, the heel strike walk, and the heel-to-toe weight rock most days, since those are foundational and low fatigue, and then the high knee march, the stride length walk, the slow motion walk, the obstacle step, and the carry and walk challenge spread across the other days as your stamina and confidence build. Listen to your body's fatigue level over any rigid schedule. What if you live alone and you're nervous about practicing without anyone around? This is completely reasonable, and the wall or sturdy countertop isn't optional in that case. It's essential. Every single one of these exercises should be done within arm's reach of something solid to grab. If you have a phone you can keep in a pocket nearby, or a way to call someone, that's a sensible precaution too. There's no version of pushing through that's worth doing alone in the middle of your kitchen with nothing to hold on to. Will this actually prevent a fall, or just make you feel more confident? Both, and they're connected. The mechanical changes, longer stride, better foot clearance, upright posture, are measurable and directly reduce trip risk. That's not a feeling, that's geometry. But the confidence that comes from those changes also matters, because a confident walker who trusts their footing makes faster, more decisive corrections when something unexpected does happen underfoot, instead of freezing. Both halves are doing real protective work. Step back from the exercises for a second and think about what's actually at stake here. A fall after 70 isn't just a bruise and a bad afternoon. It's very often the event that takes someone from full independence to needing daily help, sometimes permanently. The walk to the mailbox, the ability to live in your own home, the freedom to get up at 2 in the morning without waking anyone. All of it rests on something as small and as overlooked as where your heel lands when your foot touches the floor. The remarkable thing is that this isn't a problem that requires a gym membership, expensive equipment, or hours of your day. It requires a hallway, a wall to hold on to, and the willingness to walk slowly and deliberately for a few minutes, most days, until your body remembers something it already knew how to do. You were born knowing how to heel strike. You learned it before you learned to talk. It hasn't disappeared. It's just been buried under months or years of cautious shuffling. Digging it back out is entirely within reach, starting with your very next step.